OT hot take. Sometimes the most dysregulating part of an OT clinic is the OT clinic itself.
That might be the truest statement I've heard in 2026 because we are constantly talking about sensory needs, but are the therapy spaces actually supporting the nervous systems and regulation, or are they working against it without us even realizing it?
Welcome to All Things Sensory by Harkla,
your go-to podcast for practical insights on sensory processing and development from an occupational therapy perspective.
Hey there. Welcome back to All Things Sensory by Harkla. We're so happy to have you here. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Amanda.
We are the occupational therapy practitioners here at Harkla, and we're going to break down some, I don't want to say misconceptions. We're going to break down some conceptions today, and we're going to talk about something that I haven't talked about it before. I haven't heard about it before, but I said, let's dive in. Let's do it.
You brought up this topic and I was like, immediate yes. We need to talk about this. Yeah, when I think about a clinic, I worked in a clinic for a few years when I first started as an OT. It is absolute chaos mayhem in there, and it is super fun. I mean, we have got all the things that a kid would ever want. But my gosh, when you think about the amount of colors and clutter and lighting and smells and all the things that are happening all at once inside that clinic, I am like, no wonder why the kids get all hyped up when they're in here.
Yeah. And I have a distinct memory when I was in like the first clinic that I worked in. It was big, it was beautiful, it was, very professional. And, after school times were a hot commodity. And it was so loud, so busy. There was like 10 therapists in one room. And you could hardly even hear what your client was saying.
Yeah.
And I remember feeling dysregulated.
Yeah. And like the environment is supposed to somewhat be part of the intervention plan. And us as a therapist, obviously we're one of the major tools working with them. So if we're dysregulated, how are we expecting these kids to be better regulated when they leave us?
Exactly. So not just the environment as well, but I think it's important to talk about the cleaning products that are being used in these clinic environments as well, because a lot of our kiddos have really sensitive systems. And so when we are using really harmful, toxic cleaning products, that can also fill up their little toxin buckets to the point of they're, overflowing. And it's like we're licking these things and we're rolling in them and we're, just like touching everything. And like, yes, I understand that these places need to be clean, but there are so many different products that we can use as well that might not hurt as much.
I know. I'm excited to hear what products you use and what you've seen, because obviously we have to kill off germs because there is a lot of germs. There's a lot of licking. There's a lot of slobbering, going on inside those rooms. And I've always used Clorox products, but until you brought up this topic, I was like, oh yeah, that's like a lot. If I just wipe something down and then a kid comes in 10 minutes later and puts it in their mouth, like we've got to come up with a better solution.
Yes. So let's start with the lights, okay? Because I am really sensitive to light. I cannot stand being under fluorescent lights. They flicker. Your nervous system, especially if you are sensitive, if you're neurodivergent at all, you can probably feel this, and your nervous system can feel it, and it has to process these, really intense flickers, which I don't know if anyone else can relate, but I am exhausted by the time I leave an area where there's fluorescent lights.
Yeah, we talk about it all the time in here because we have so much of the recording lights going. And by the time we leave at the end of the day, I am way more drained than just on my average day. And I definitely think that it impacts us, like eye strain and fatigue, even headaches. So it's something really to consider. What are the overhead lighting fixtures like at your clinic or your place of work? And how can that be impacting your kids' regulation?
Yeah. And even in my own clinic, I have like a fluorescent, I don't even know if it's fluorescent. It's some sort of like big light in the ceiling. I don't turn it on. I have lamps that I'll turn on and a salt lamp.
Yeah.
And my kids come in and they're like, oh, it's nice. And then if we have to turn the light on, 9 times out of 10, they're like, oh, no, turn it off, which is crazy to me.
Wait, right? I love the idea of a salt lamp.
Yes.
That's adorable.
It's like a zen little area.
Yeah, I feel like that's how therapy should be. It should
Yeah.
be zen. It should feel like yoga, calm.
Yes, relaxing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, one more thing that I just want to touch on briefly since we're talking about lights and visual things. You know, when you come into a clinic and it's just like there's things on the wall, there's colors, there's, equipment, there's, maybe clutter on the floor and just all the things. I think that's a helpful thing to think about as well. Just like, where can we reduce visual input? Not saying that we need a blank white wall, but like, let's be, what's the word that I'm thinking of? Thoughtful in our curation of design and our organizational strategies to like, again, kind of reduce that nervous system impact.
Yeah, I was just looking. We have like little cubes over there, and we have cubes within our clinic. And it's really nice to have cubes where you can put all the toys in them and then, maybe label them so that we can easily find things. But instead of just having all of your board games and your crayons and your markers all out there for the kids to see and for you to see, put them in little packing cubes or get a closet that the door is closed. So that way we can't see everything all at once, and then just pull out 2 toys at a time that would be beneficial towards your client's goals for that session, and start there.
Totally. Yes. Now, kind of piggybacking on that, talking about auditory input, like we mentioned, clinics, if it's a big multidisciplinary clinic, they're often loud, they're often busy, there's often like kids running amok around, and everyone's just kind of, in one big area, not in every clinic, but at least that's what I'm envisioning right now. So how can we decrease some of that auditory input to make it a little less overwhelming?
Yeah, I even think about like waiting rooms. They're either super silent or it's like the elevator type music. Like, I wonder how we can get more Zen style music, like really light in the background that you're like, oh, I kind of want to listen to that, but it's not so loud that it's overwhelming you. Like rain or something, just in the background, or having like a little waterfall thing there in the corner. So that way it just helps the people sitting in the waiting room know, okay, this is going to be a calm environment that we shouldn't be too chaotic in.
That's so funny because in my head, I'm envisioning the waiting room where like kids are literally like climbing the walls. They're upside down on the couches, ripping all the kitchen stuff out. And I'm like, I'm uncomfortable in this waiting room, how do we find that like middle ground of like, how can we bring the Zen, but also like realize that we're at an OT clinic and it's like, kids have to be comfortable.
When I worked in the clinic, it was more during that pandemic time. And so a lot of people would wait in their cars or outside because we didn't want the waiting room to be so chaotic. And I kind of liked it because it would get families outdoors. Like some of them would just be playing in like the little grassy area out there. Or if they weren't showing up 20 minutes earlier, they were showing up just on time. So it wasn't so chaotic, and it actually kind of worked. So just an idea, not saying that all of your families have to go like wait in their car, but if you have a little outdoor space that you can let families know, like, hey, there's a grassy area right over there. If you guys just want to wait out there till 2 minutes before, it'll help with your child getting some energy out before they come back in, and some connection time with your kiddo. But that's just something that comes to mind for me.
I love that. Yeah. And speaking from like a clinic, if you're at a multidisciplinary clinic and there's like, speech and OT and PT and everyone's in the same room, what we would do occasionally if it was really busy is we would like stagger our times of like being in the gym and then being in like the private rooms or being in the back, like just, having that flexibility of like rotating between the areas to try and keep it a little less chaotic.
Yeah, I like that.
It's hard though, because, a lot of kids need that like intense input first. And so, making sure those kids are like meeting that high threshold first.
Definitely. I always felt so bad if a kid got speech before OT, especially they were a sensory kiddo, because they would go into the speech room and it'd be so chaotic for their 30-minute session. And then they'd come and be like the perfect child during our OT session once they got to do their obstacle courses in the swing. And it was like, all right, we've got to figure out how to switch this around in our schedules. And then once we switched it was like, oh, okay, that's not always the case. But for our kiddos that do need big movements to like focus and attend, it can definitely be a lot more helpful. Or letting the speech therapist go in and use the sensory clinic for their session, and we flip flop and we do more of the seated work during our session and vice versa.
Yes, I love that. I think that should happen more often than not.
Agreed.
All right, let's chat a little bit more about cleaning products and smells, which, smell wise, you can only control so much, right? But maybe having a diffuser in the area could be helpful. I would 100% avoid having any Glade plugins in the area, any artificial fragrances, I think is going to be really helpful for nervous systems.
Yeah.
And then, we would always have to clean in between the sessions and wipe everything down. But instead of using, Lysol, for example, or what'd you say, Clorox, right? Using something like Force of Nature. And just a funny little story in my clinic now where it's just me, I had a family come in and they had a little young kiddo that we were working with who was on the floor and crawling and working on all the little things. And mom had made a comment about what do I use to clean the floors? And we had a good relationship. And, I thought it was a great question. I was like, oh, I use Force of Nature. And she's like, oh, thank goodness. I was just a little worried that, there's all the chemicals and stuff. And I'm like, girl, I got you. This is a safe place.
I feel like your clinic would be a very safe place. And it's a lot easier, right? When you're a private practice owner versus, maybe you work for a hospital system and you've got 30 employees and a lot of staff going on. And the products you're getting are more funded from your company, But even as a therapist, if you do have a smaller space, if you have your small little speech room at that larger clinic space, how can you swap out some of your own products? Slow swaps too. We don't need to swap everything or get rid of everything all at once. And sometimes you probably do actually need to use a more intense Clorox wipe.
Absolutely.
If a child comes in and they had hand, foot, and mouth, or, they were sick and you need that more intense product.
There's a time and a place.
There is, for sure. But you were saying the air fresheners, and it's funny because I'm not super sensitive. I love smells.
Yes.
And at the school, a lot of the teachers have different scents in their rooms. And I love going in their room and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so cozy in here. What scent do you have in today? And I love it.
Yes.
But I never thought about how there might be some kiddos that are sensitive to those, especially if they're a little bit, are sensory sensitive kiddos and how that might be impacting them.
Well,
so that's a good thing
and
to
not
think
even
about.
Just from a sensory standpoint, from literally a toxic standpoint, right? Those Glade plugins, not to throw any shade to Glade, but
shade to Glade,
they're extremely toxic and, they disrupt our little endocrine system. And I'm getting a little crunchy, but I think that OTs, we're naturally we can go down this holistic route. And I think it's important that we should. And we have the opportunity in a lot of areas to be able to swap some of those things. So it's oh yeah, let's try some essential oils or let's try something that's a little bit more natural.
Yeah,
right?
I like the essential oil swap because it can also be, there can be a nice little calm lighting to those essential oils.
Yeah.
Sometimes just the sound of the little puffs coming out is very calming. Yeah, I love that swap.
Yeah. So just, food for thought, of course. Take our advice and run with it or don't. But it's just a different opinion.
Yeah. And thinking about what are our kids, what are they actually breathing in and processing and interacting with all day, and how is that impacting them?
Exactly. I mean, you think about their little toxic bucket and it's just oh, in the morning they're, having their Red 40 breakfast. And then at school, they're, breathing in, I don't know. You even made the comment about mold in your school because you're in the South and it's it's musty and humid. So it's who knows if that's a thing,
And honestly, mold is something, I mean, you can kind of control it, but honestly, you kind of can't. There's so many homes, especially if you live in a humid climate place, you can be the cleanest family, but you can't control every ounce of mold that you're coming into contact with. Even stores you're going into, coffee shops you're going to, it could feel clean in there, but there might still be mold in the air. And there's going to be, right? Mold grows, it's humid, we get it. But how can we reduce and
Yeah.
using some kind of air filtration system.
Yes. Oh,
that
I'm glad
was
you
like
brought that up.
my favorite thing that I bought for my classroom this year was an air filter, and I immediately turned it on. I sat it right next to me on my desk. It was a
Yes.
big one, but I was like, as close to the air that I'm breathing all day, I am keeping it there all day, because I was like, I don't know how much mold is in this school. The school was
Yeah.
built in, I don't even know, the 50s, the
Yeah.
60s. Who knows?
Yeah, I'm actually really glad you brought that up because I forgot about it. But yeah, I think air purifiers in schools, air purifiers in clinics, and it's just like slowly but surely kind of reducing some of that exposure
Yeah.
because it adds up throughout the day. It's like I mentioned, breakfast, we have this, and we're at school all day, and maybe we're exposed to this, and then we go to soccer after practice, and then we have, all of the chemicals from the grass or whatever, like control what you can control. I'm going a little off the chain, but I'm still out there doing all the things, but it's like, oh, it's just in the back of my mind. Like, yeah, throw an air purifier on. Yeah, have some glutathione. Yeah, whatever it is.
Yeah. And if you're a clinic owner or, you have your own space, just these are little things to think about, especially if you're about to place a big order, you're like, oh, okay, what's one thing we can switch this week out that's just going to benefit our clients?
Yes, totally.
Final takeaways here, the environment is part of the intervention. So just making sure that this is a calm and comfortable and safe feeling place for our OT clients, our speech therapy clients, our PT clients. It's super important, and it does make a difference.
It does. Those little changes do add up, especially, with the lighting changes and the auditory changes and modifications, the waiting room changes, the cleaning product changes, just go through maybe you can't, but, maybe just like take inventory if you can, or have that conversation with someone and talk about it and just see like, hey, maybe we can make some of these changes, and maybe we'd notice, some positive changes with our kiddos, but it doesn't hurt to start slow and just like, dip a toe in.
Yeah. And maybe you're like us and you've never thought about this before. Honestly, awareness is that first step of like, oh gosh, I've never thought about how our clinic is. And now you might be hyper aware of what's going on inside your clinic. And so those small changes, over time can really make a big difference.
Yes. Now feel free to take a screenshot if you're listening. If this podcast resonated with you, take a screenshot, tag us on social media at All Things Sensory Podcast, and let us know your deepest, darkest thoughts on these, subjects. Maybe this gave you a light bulb moment, maybe not, but let us know.
Yeah. And then let us know as you make those changes, comment and let us know what you saw change in your clients, within yourself, with the way you practice.
Yeah.
And we're excited to hear what you guys have to say and how this changes your life.
Yes.
Changes your life.
Okay, thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you back here next week for another episode.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to All Things Sensory by Harkla.
You can find links and resources from today's conversation right in the description of this episode.
If you want to connect, ask a question, or share what resonated with you, come find us on Instagram at All Things Sensory Podcast. We'd love to hear from you.
As a podcast listener, you get 10% off your first order at Harkla. Just use the code SENSORY at checkout or head to harkla.co/sensory to get started.
We're so grateful you're here and honored to be a part of your journey.
Everything we share here is for educational purposes only and reflects our professional experience. It isn't medical advice. Please consult your healthcare provider for support specific to your child.
Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.